Something has been shifting, quietly, almost imperceptibly, beneath the surface of your ordinary days. You may not have had language for it at first. It felt more like a subtle tremor in your emotional atmosphere, a memory surfacing without invitation, a dream carrying a familiar presence, a name drifting through your thoughts when the world around you falls silent. February 25th carries a particular emotional symbolism this year, not as a literal cosmic event, not as a guaranteed turning point, but as a psychological and spiritual threshold. A moment where dormant feelings rise into awareness, where karmic bonds that once operated in shadow begin to reveal their imprint on your heart. This is what I call the shadow love portal. It is not a doorway in the sky. It is not fate descending with certainty. It is an internal convergence, a crossing of emotional timelines where past and present briefly stand face to face. You may feel it as restlessness, or curiosity, or an unexplainable pull towards someone who once meant everything, or still quietly does. Perhaps someone new has entered your orbit, carrying an energy that feels strangely familiar, as if your nervous system recognizes something your logic cannot yet define. This is not about fantasy. It is not about romantic destiny written in stone. It is about awareness rising where unconscious patterns once ruled. Because sometimes love does not reappear as comfort. Sometimes it reappears as clarity. And clarity, before it stabilizes, can feel electric. You are not imagining the shift. You are sensing the surfacing of something that has waited patiently in the background of your emotional landscape. The shadow is not returning to reclaim you. It is stepping forward so you can finally see it clearly. There are seasons in life when the past refuses to remain silent. It rises, not to punish you, but to complete something unfinished within you. You may have noticed emotions resurfacing, feelings you thought were resolved, conversations replaying in the background of your thoughts, subtle waves of nostalgia mixed with unease. This is how karmic energy signals movement, not with fireworks, not with dramatic declarations, but with emotional gravity. A karmic bond is not simply about another person. It is about the pattern that formed between you. When that pattern begins to shift, your internal world feels it first. The shadow love portal represents a moment of confrontation with what still carries charge inside your heart. You are not being dragged backward. You are being invited to see clearly. These bonds often feel magnetic because they were formed in intensity, in longing, in fear, in deep attachment. They awaken parts of you that were never fully integrated. And now, something in your awareness is mature enough to face it. Restlessness is not random. It is information. Something unresolved is asking to be seen in daylight instead of shadow. Energy speaks long before logic organizes the message. Your body has likely been signaling the shift. Sleep patterns change. The chest feels tight without explanation. Intuition whispers without presenting clear evidence. These are not supernatural events. They are internal recalibrations. When emotional timelines begin to overlap in memory and awareness, the nervous system responds. A karmic connection carries energetic imprint, not mystical destiny, but emotional memory stored deeply in the psyche. When that imprint reactivates, sensation follows. You may feel warmth and resistance at the same time, attraction and caution, curiosity and self-protection. That contradiction is not confusion. It is evolution. The shadow love portal does not reopen wounds for drama. It illuminates where growth is ready to occur. You are not meant to dissolve into old patterns again. You are meant to recognize them while standing stronger than before. Clarity often feels unsettling at first because it dismantles illusion. But within that dismantling is empowerment waiting to be claimed. Shadow love is not dark because it is evil. It is shadowed because parts of you were unseen when it began. Perhaps it awakened the fear of abandonment. Perhaps it triggered the desire to be chosen at any cost. Maybe it revealed jealousy, obsession, or a hunger to prove your worth. These are not flaws. They are fragments of your unintegrated self asking for compassion. Karmic bonds function as mirrors. They reflect both wound and strength. They show you where you shrink and where you burn brightly. And on February 25th, symbolically, this mirror becomes clearer. Not to judge you, not to shame you, but to allow you to observe without losing yourself. Awareness changes the dynamic. The moment you see the pattern consciously, it loses the power to control you unconsciously. The portal is not about romantic destiny. It is about emotional sovereignty. You are being shown what once felt overwhelming so that it no longer has to be. It is important to ground this in truth. A portal is not a guarantee of reunion. It is not a cosmic contract forcing events into place. It is a symbolic window of heightened awareness. If someone reaches out, the significance lies not in the message itself, but in who you are when you read it. If silence continues, the significance lies in what that silence activates within you. Either way, the focus shifts back to your evolution. Karmic bonds dissolve when their lesson integrates. Sometimes that integration comes through conversation, sometimes through apology, sometimes through quiet acceptance. The shadow love portal is less about another person stepping out of the dark and more about you stepping into self-recognition. When you respond differently than you once did, the cycle shifts. When you honor yourself instead of chasing validation, the timeline changes. This is not about winning someone back. It is about reclaiming the parts of yourself you once gave away. You may notice small coincidences intensifying, familiar songs playing unexpectedly, dreams vivid with detail, repeating numbers catching your eye at just the right moment. Synchronicity does not promise outcome. It highlights focus. When your awareness tunes into unresolved emotion, your perception sharpens around related symbols. This is not fate pressing down on you. It is consciousness expanding. These subtle signals serve as invitations to reflect rather than react. Instead of asking, "What does this mean about them?" ask, "What does this reveal about me?" The energy around a karmic bond becomes transformative when you shift attention inward. Each reminder becomes a checkpoint. Each memory becomes data. You are not being pulled into the past. You are gathering understanding from it. And understanding is power in its most stable form. Transformation does not announce itself with certainty. It arrives as tension, as hesitation before sending a message, as the quiet debate inside your chest about whether to respond or release. That tension is growth pressing against an outdated version of you. You are no longer the same person who once entered this bond. You carry more awareness now, more emotional vocabulary, more boundaries. The shadow love portal is not here to test you or tempt you. It is here to reveal your evolution. The real shift is not whether someone steps forward. The real shift is whether you stand firmly in who you have become. In this moment, you are not chasing clarity from another. You are embodying it within yourself. And that embodiment, steady, grounded, self-aware, is the true emergence from shadow into light. There comes a point in every karmic cycle when confusion can no longer sustain itself. The emotional fog thins. The story you told yourself about what happened begins to unravel thread by thread. And what remains is not blame, not fantasy, not regret. What remains is clarity. This is the revelation phase of the shadow love portal. It is subtle, almost quiet, but it changes everything. You begin to see the connection for what it truly was. Not just chemistry, not just timing, but a catalyst. You recognize how it shaped you, how it forced you to confront abandonment, attachment, control, longing, devotion. You see the younger version of yourself who entered that bond seeking something outside that could only be stabilized within. And instead of judging that version of you, something unexpected happens. You feel compassion. That compassion is the breakthrough, because once you can witness your past self without shame, the karmic charge begins to loosen. The bond steps out of the dark, not to reclaim you, but to reveal how far you've already traveled. It may feel as though two versions of you are standing face to face, who you were then and who you are now. This is timeline convergence, not science fiction, not literal dimensions collapsing, but psychological and spiritual integration. The past identity that once reacted from fear meets the present identity that responds from awareness. And in that meeting, something stabilizes. You might feel emotional waves rising unexpectedly, a sudden urge to forgive, or an equally strong urge to finally let go. These impulses are not random. They signal that the internal narrative is shifting. The shadow love portal represents a crossroads where repeating cycles can end simply because you see them clearly. You are not erasing history, you are integrating it. When timelines converge, the energy that once felt chaotic begins to reorganize, and you realize something powerful. You are no longer trapped inside the story. You are the one rewriting it. Rebirth is rarely dramatic. It does not always arrive with tears streaming down your face or a cinematic confession in the rain. More often, it enters quietly, subtly, almost unnoticed at first. It feels like a shift in breathing, a softening in the chest where tightness once lived, a slower heartbeat when their name crosses your mind. Emotional rebirth within a karmic dynamic does not announce itself. It stabilizes you. There was a time when the thought of this connection could destabilize your entire day. A message could elevate you to the highest emotional peak, or silence could drop you into uncertainty. Your nervous system was entangled, your identity partially fused with the rhythm of another person's presence. That intensity felt intoxicating. It also felt exhausting. Now something is different. You notice that the urgency has dissolved. The craving for reassurance no longer dictates your mood. If this person were to appear in front of you today, your pulse might quicken, but you would remain anchored. You would observe instead of collapsing inward. You would listen instead of projecting fantasy. You would feel, but you would not unravel. That is rebirth. It is the transformation from reactive attachment to conscious connection. It is the moment you realize you can experience emotion without being consumed by it. The shadow love portal illuminated what once held power over you so that you could reclaim that power internally. And here is the deeper truth. Rebirth is not about becoming indifferent. It is about becoming integrated. You are not shutting down your heart. You are refining it. The intensity that once defined this bond has transmuted into discernment. You understand now that emotional chaos is not proof of depth. That longing alone does not equal alignment. That magnetic pull can coexist with incompatibility. You may even feel a quiet gratitude emerging, not for the pain, but for the awakening. Because without that intensity, you might never have examined your patterns. You might never have discovered how deeply you were capable of loving. You might never have realized how much you were willing to sacrifice just to feel chosen. But now, you choose yourself. And that choice reverberates through your energy field like a recalibration. Your vibration stabilizes. Your emotional body feels less volatile. The pendulum swings stop. You no longer oscillate between hope and despair. Instead, you stand in clarity. This is the emotional rebirth, not a dramatic ending, not a fairy tale reunion, but a sovereign heart, emerging from shadow with wisdom intact. There are moments when understanding arrives without warning. You could be doing something ordinary, folding laundry, staring out a window, driving through familiar streets, and suddenly, the entire connection makes sense, not in fragments, not in emotional waves, but in a cohesive realization that lands with quiet certainty. It feels like an internal download, a synchronization between your intuition and your intellect. The pieces align. You stop asking why they behaved the way they did. You stop analyzing every conversation for hidden meaning. Instead, you see the dynamic as a whole. You see your role. You see theirs. You see the lesson woven between you. And surprisingly, the clarity does not feel heavy. It feels relieving. Because confusion drains energy. Rumination exhausts the nervous system. The constant search for answers keeps the wound open. But when awareness integrates fully, the wound begins to close naturally. Not through force, not through denial, but through comprehension. The shadow love portal amplifies this moment of integration. It creates the emotional conditions where suppressed insight can surface. And when it does, it feels almost peaceful. You realize that closure was never something they had to hand you. It was something you were always capable of generating internally. You might even revisit memories and feel differently about them. Scenes that once triggered regret now evoke neutrality. Conversations that once replayed with self-criticism now replay with understanding. You recognize that both of you were operating from your level of awareness at the time. And that recognition dissolves resentment. This is not spiritual bypassing. It is emotional maturity. The download of awareness changes your frequency. You stop chasing external validation for your experience. You trust your perception. You trust your growth. You trust that what unfolded did so within a larger arc of personal evolution. And the most powerful shift of all, the questions fade. The obsessive need to decode every sign, every silence, every synchronicity begins to quiet. Because you no longer require external confirmation to validate your internal knowing. You understand. And that understanding is enough. Every portal contains a threshold, a moment where awareness demands embodiment. Insight alone is not transformation. Action aligned with insight is. You now stand at a subtle but profound intersection. The old self still exists as memory. The one who waited anxiously, who overextended emotionally, who equated unpredictability with passion. And the new self stands beside that memory, grounded, observant, self-respecting. The choice point is not always dramatic. It might look like receiving a message and choosing to respond hours later instead of immediately. It might look like declining an invitation that feels misaligned. It might look like not reaching out at all, even when nostalgia tempts you. Externally, these actions seem small. Internally, they are seismic, because each aligned decision reinforces your new identity. Each boundary strengthens your nervous system. Each moment of self-honor rewires the pattern that once kept you cycling through emotional highs and lows. The Shadow Love Portal presents this choice not as a test, but as an opportunity. The karmic bond steps into awareness, long enough for you to decide who you are now within it. You are no longer reacting from abandonment fear. You are no longer seeking proof of worth through another's attention. You are choosing from clarity. And here is the subtle power. Sometimes the most transformative choice is energetic. You may never say anything. You may never receive closure in words. But internally, you release the narrative that you were incomplete without them. That release alters your trajectory. When you choose from awareness, instead of wound, you collapse the old cycle. The repetition ends not because the other person changed, but because you did. The emotional contract dissolves when you stop unconsciously agreeing to its terms. This is authorship. This is sovereignty. This is the moment you realize that destiny is not something happening to you. It is something shaped by the frequency from which you respond. And standing at this threshold, grounded in who you have become, you understand that whatever unfolds next will no longer be driven by shadow. It will be guided by consciousness. Something subtle begins to solidify within you. You no longer identify as the one who was left, or the one who chased, or the one who hoped endlessly. You begin to identify as the one who learned, the one who evolved, the one who transformed emotional chaos into clarity. Identity shift is quiet but irreversible. You notice how your standards have recalibrated, how your intuition feels sharper, how your tolerance for emotional inconsistency has decreased. This is not bitterness, it is alignment. The shadow love portal marks the end of self-betrayal. You understand now that intensity alone is not intimacy, chemistry alone is not compatibility, and longing alone is not love. That understanding stabilizes your energy in a way that no external validation ever could. There is a version of love that does not cling. It does not beg. It does not collapse under uncertainty. It feels open but steady. This is heart activation without attachment. It is the realization that you can feel deeply without losing grounding. You can care without compromising your self-worth. When karmic lessons integrate, the heart does not close. It refines. You may even feel gratitude for the connection that once unsettled you, not because it was perfect, but because it awakened you. The shadow love portal ultimately reveals that the bond was never meant to imprison you. It was meant to evolve you. And now, standing in this new awareness, you sense something expanding rather than constricting. Your capacity for love has matured, your intuition has strengthened, and your energy no longer seeks validation in the dark. It radiates from within. At some point, you realize the story you once repeated about this connection no longer fits. The narrative of almost, of what if, of if only I had, begins to lose its emotional charge. It feels outdated, like clothing you've outgrown, but kept folded in the back of your mind. The shadow love portal does not erase memory, it restructures meaning. You begin to understand that the bond was not a missed destiny. It was a formative chapter, and chapters are not meant to be lived in forever. When the old narrative collapses, there can be a brief moment of disorientation. If this was not your forever, then what was it? The answer surfaces slowly. It was your awakening. It showed you your attachment style. It revealed your emotional thresholds. It confronted you with your fear of loss and your capacity for devotion. And now that you have extracted the wisdom, the intensity no longer defines you. What once felt like unfinished business now feels like completed curriculum. There is a distinct sensation that arrives when you detach energetically, even if circumstances remain unchanged. It feels like space, spaciousness in your chest, spaciousness in your thoughts. You are no longer scanning your phone for signals or interpreting silence as rejection. The emotional static quiets. This is energetic independence, not indifference, not coldness, but sovereignty. The shadow love portal reaches its peak when you recognize that your emotional stability does not hinge on another person's presence or absence. You can appreciate what was without needing it to return. You can acknowledge attraction without surrendering your boundaries. This independence is powerful because it is chosen, not forced. It is the result of awareness, integrating fully. And once you experience this steadiness, you realize you were never truly waiting for them. You were waiting to anchor into yourself. Destiny is not a fixed event descending from the sky. It is alignment unfolding from within. When karmic cycles complete, energy frees up. Attention returns to your own path. You may feel inspired in unexpected ways. Creative impulses resurface. Goals that once felt distant begin to feel accessible. This is not coincidence. When emotional entanglement dissolves, your vitality redirects. The Shadow Love Portal was never solely about romance. It was about reclaiming life force. As you release the weight of unresolved attachment, you create space for connections that resonate with who you are now, not who you were. Destiny, in this sense, is not about a specific person stepping forward. It is about you stepping forward. Clearer, steadier, more self-aware than before. And that shift subtly alters the kind of experiences you attract. Integration is not loud. It does not announce itself with grand gestures. It feels like calm certainty. You think about the person and feel neutral or gently appreciative rather than destabilized. You imagine a future, and it no longer revolves around rewriting the past. This is quiet power. The Shadow Love Portal closes not with drama, but with understanding. You carry forward the insight without carrying the weight. And perhaps the most profound realization emerges here. You are capable of deep love without losing yourself. You are capable of passion without chaos. You are capable of connection rooted in mutual growth rather than karmic repetition. That knowledge becomes part of your foundation. What once lived in darkness has now been examined in light. The shadow did not disappear. It integrated. The parts of you that feared abandonment now understand self-security. The parts that craved validation now recognize inherent worth. And the parts that once confused intensity with destiny now discern alignment from illusion. February 25th symbolized a turning point, a moment of heightened awareness where karmic bonds could step forward long enough for you to see them clearly. Not to promise reunion, not to guarantee outcomes, but to catalyze growth. And growth is exactly what occurred. You stand different now, softer, yet stronger, open, yet grounded, reflective, yet decisive. If this message resonated with you, if you felt seen somewhere in these words, take a moment to like this video, share your experience in the comments, and subscribe for more reflections that meet you at this level of awareness. Your engagement allows these messages to reach those who may be standing at their own threshold of clarity. Because the true activation was never about someone stepping out of the dark. It was about you realizing you no longer live there.